notes later about when you need to get your agenda items in. Loggers ballots, we'll be counting those, and we'll wait till after the meeting to do that, so we don't tie up the meeting today. But loggers is our county employee retirement system one. And we do a representative to the conference. Next regular meeting, same time, same place, right here next week. And here's the agenda items. Because of the holiday, they must be in Friday at 10 a.m. We must have them in at least 24 hours of business day before the meeting. So that means they have to be in on Friday. Other business, correspondence, anybody? Public comment. Departmental reports. We have some sad note. Betty's husband's died. There are the plans for it. So she's one of our senior. Your lady was here 37 years, and Betty's been here maybe that long. I don't know.
Right at 30, 30.
Yeah, I think Betty's maybe our senior employee. Anyway, there's that note of information. On the state auditor's office, here's the latest letter we got from them, dated 22nd. I got my mailed copy this morning. But the highlights are they have officially agreed to the audit. They will contact us, and the time frame is in the coming weeks. That's all we have. And they will set up formal meetings with our staff, and we don't know what that means yet. So that's where it is right now. The ball is in their court, and I have several contacts I can talk to, but basically I don't have any questions until they contact us with these items. So that's where we are. And I can open up to questions, but I don't know if I can answer any of them, because that's where it is. Yes, Gary.
The county has a fraud policy, and so I'm wondering what is the status of the county's fraud investigation, because I think a few months ago, Von Carricker presented these allegations, and I remember it was remarked that you all would check into it. So I'm just asking what's the status of the county's investigation pursuant to its fraud policy.
Okay, that was handed over to the Washington County Prosecuting Attorney's Office because of possible conflict of interest. And he has taken care of that part of it. I think that's what you're talking about.
I think the fraud policy calls for the sheriff to investigate allegations of fraud.
Well, and I might be wrong here, but we have to act on first person knowledge. If it's somebody else saying somebody else and it gets to be hearsay, we can't really act on that. Does that make sense?
So it needs to be an insider rather than an outsider?
I guess effectively the whistleblower cause the state to have interest in doing that thing. I mean, somebody can come and say, so-and-so told me that so-and-so did something, but we really can't act on that. If someone, you're the first person.
But I'm just referring to the fraud policy.
Yes.
And basically the fence is kind of low. It even allows for an outsider like Vaughn to bring forth allegations to trigger the fraud policy. And so when she presented them, it was represented to her by you all that you would check into it. So I suppose that the fraud policy would be implemented, which I think calls for the sheriff's office to do the fraud investigation, which I reviewed the fraud policy and I presented a proposal to handle a conflict of interest, because I don't think it's fair to the sheriff to investigate the prosecutor. So are we following the fraud policy? Does it not apply in this instance? If it does not, why not?
Well, I think it applies. But there's other alternatives too. If there's a conflict with the sheriff, then there's a prosecuting attorney. With the then it can be the presiding commissioner can call for assistance or whatever it may be. But those are about the only three that can request an investigation or a policy to that. But I don't know how. You could list more people, but I don't know how that would change anything really.
Okay. Well, one of the issues that came up recently this summer is that when the allegations were had a few years ago about the misapplication of mileage expense, Jared stood up in an open meeting and said, I never had it reported to me.
By law enforcement.
And so it left open for the door that nothing really ever happened. In other words, it was handled internally by the leadership of the county, and Jared never gave an independent investigation of it, and it just kind of like got thrown into the sea of forgetfulness. And I think one of the things that we want to do, particularly as an office holder, because I think the momentum is building in the community to throw the bums out. Well, guess who one of the bums is? I'm one of the bums. And so I want to really try and enhance as much accountability of the county with our citizens so that we know that we're being as transparent as policy. We do have a fraud policy, and so what all that you guys do as it relates to the allegations that were brought by Vaughn, because it doesn't have to be, if you read the fraud policy, it doesn't have to be an insider, an employee to allege fraud. It can be an outsider. And so what's the status of the county's investigation?
In my mind, the whistleblower overrode everything on that. And so that's where we are now. It's the whistleblower, we're on this, and we've got a major audit coming up, and that will go back to any reasons people were paid and all that, and goes back to the allegations of fraud.
But I see what you're saying, because the whistleblower came much later.
To the state auditor.
Correct.
But months ago, the allegations
Right, that's what I'm
were
saying. So
presented
back then,
in this
what
room
happened
by
in that
Vaughn.
interim?
And so I'm assuming the sheriff never did an investigation, a report was never issued by the sheriff and presented to you all. Because I think if you do a strict reading of the fraud policy, that's what it calls for.
Dan,
Which I think is unfair to ask the sheriff to do that of the prosecutor.
Well, first of all, the sheriff department's not asked to do an investigation into that incident. I take issue with the fact that you say they're going to throw all the funds out. I think, listen to very few people in the community if you're here now. But if the sheriff department asks to do an investigation, we will either do it or we would refer it to the State Highway Patrol or the Attorney General's office. That's where our fraud policy says for us to do. But I haven't been asked to do any investigation at this point.
Okay. Dan Ward, do you, okay.
I'm good, that was answered.
Okay. All right, any other comments? Recent road progress, they're elevating that to get above the floodplain. At one point, it's coming up 36 inches.
Correct.
A lot of rock being rolled. Any other comment on that? They're opening and widening it up a little bit.
We're still a few weeks out. That's about 2 days' progress from where you see on the picture on the right. The driveway goes in to the vehicle on the top part of the page. That's about 2 days, about $10,000 in rock, and it's been elevated about 24 inches right there.
24 now? Okay.
This area has been prone to flooding, backwater from the Wolf Creek, and just outside of the picture, the road width is 12.5 feet wide.
Not only are we gonna build it up, but we're also gonna widen the road.
The shoulders are very, very soft and mucky.
Very soft.
Very
If you,
narrow.
if you meet traffic there, it's real likely you get off and it'll pull you right out into it.
You cannot pass 2 cars.
It's a hazard.
And a heavily traveled road.
Yeah, high speed. Okay, Barbera Bridge is near completion, and this is one of those places where the creek runs alongside the road, and that's unusual. Getting that done. And August 28th, today, new regulations go into effect regarding purchasing guidelines. Now, you've always heard me talk about how it's $6,000 you have to go to seal bids, that goes to $10,000 a day. And also, today, the prevailing wage new laws kick in on guiding us on how we have to pay prevailing wage stuff. And so I'm working on a new quick guide purchasing. Any other questions, comments, additions?
Was that the only major change in our purchasing policy?
Mark,
Yeah, that's all I know of right now.
I'm going to stress the $500 beginning limit on that, on the new guide, quick guide and all that, but, I'm gonna reward that a little bit, other than that, but that's the primary one.
We referred to the auditor to stay in compliance regularly.
Randy to have it. Okay,
Move to adjourn.
all in favor? Why do people settle here?
Mr. Murphy's airplane ran out of gas and landed.
Because the water.
Somebody said what?
To water.
Okay,
Well, I've got a joke about that.
okay.
My family is from Corning, Arkansas. In the 1930s, my grandfather died, and Highway 67 was a true hillbilly highway. And when families would have acute distress back in the Depression, they would literally take the bus from the hills, from Arkansas or wherever, as far north as they could. My family made it up to St. Louis, so my joke is that Farmington was populated by a bunch of people that didn't have enough bus money to go to St. Louis.
Gee, thanks. Thank y'all for